Okay, everyone. I was just checking to make sure that everything works. Hi, for those of you that are here, I apologize. This is my first time using StreamYard, so if I seem a little unfamiliar techie-wise, I'm working on it. So thank you for hopping on, watching live. Today's live is going to be all about reselling, and it's going to be a question and answer, and just whatever you want to know, fire them off in the comments, and I will answer them as they come in. For those of you who are watching on YouTube, you probably are a little bit more aware of who I am. If you're watching this from the Facebook group, I am Tiffany Rosenbaum, and I am a reseller, and I do other side hustles. I've been reselling for 3 years now, and I love it. I am in my office right now. This is where I store my inventory. So I'm going to give it a couple of minutes for a couple of other people to hop on, and then I will dive in. If no questions come in from the chat box, then I have a list of just the basic questions that most people want to know when it comes to reselling, and I will answer those, and you could just ask questions as they come up. So I will give it a couple more minutes. For those of you that are watching, you can tell us what it is that you do or what you hope to learn about reselling. It's kind of the same thing as asking a question, but even if you have questions that maybe aren't about reselling or they're about just business in general, I can try and help answer those as well. So I'm going to give it probably about another minute, and then we'll get started. And I hope you guys can hear me well enough. If you can't hear me, put in the comments, please. It says my mic is good, so hopefully you guys can hear me. I'm not sure. Again, this is my first time using StreamYard. It's giving me a grade out for comments from the group. Maybe I didn't link it right. I'm not entirely sure. Let's see what it says. Well, hopefully it works. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. So I'm going to save the most asked question for the end. But so let's start with the beginning. So what kind of tools do you need for reselling? It's pretty basic. You don't need a lot of things. So you will need a scale, and it could be something as simple as just a little kitchen scale. It doesn't have to be very big or expensive, something that you can measure pounds in, unless you're selling massive heavy things. A little one, I think I paid $20 for mine. You could even honestly use your regular body scale until you get established. So you need a scale, a printer. It doesn't have to be like a fancy label printer. It can be just like a regular inkjet printer or anything just to print labels on. You can print it on regular paper. If you do decide you want to invest a little bit more, you can buy a label printer and labels. That does make it a lot easier so that you're not cutting and taping and all of that fun stuff. So a printer, and there are some ways you might be able to get around not having a printer. There is a lot of times now the reselling platforms will give you like a QR code that you could just take to the post office and have them scan it, and then they just print the label for you there. I've never done that because I have my own printer, and I had my own printer when they rolled that out. But I don't think if you have a printer, I think you can just do it that way. You pull up the QR code, and I'm not positive that all platforms do it. I know that Mercari does. I think Facebook does too. So don't quote me on that. I've never used it, but I do know it's an option on some of the platforms. Another tool you will need is shipping supplies. And so really the most basic shipping supplies, you're going to need tape, probably scissors, things that you would have like floating around your house maybe anyway. Boxes, you can recycle boxes. You can get boxes for free from the post office. A lot of people didn't know that, but they have boxes inside the post office. And if you go to their website, they have even more styles and shapes and sizes of boxes that you can get for totally free delivered to your house. The caveat, the con with that though, is you can only use those boxes when you are shipping via USPS. You can't like take them and then use them to ship UPS or FedEx or something like that. And if they say priority on them, you do have to ship priority. And there are different rules and for different boxes, but they do offer free shipping boxes. There's poly mailers and bubble mailers. So poly mailers are just like the thin plastic. There's no bubble wrap in it. You can get them in clear, you can get them in black, you can get them in white, any color, even with pretty designs like flamingos on it. And so I usually will use poly bags for things like clothes or bathing suits or things that really don't need a lot of protection. I will ship Crocs, and a lot of times I'll put those in there because Crocs are pretty sturdy. So then there's the padded mailers, which are the bubble wrap inside mailers. I will use those a lot for smaller items, things like makeup, things that maybe need a little bit more protection, but they don't necessarily need full protection of a box. And the USPS website also has padded flat rate envelopes, and they're a decent size. I think maybe like 11 by 10. That don't quote me on that either, but they're bigger size. They're not quite little. So you would need packaging. If you prefer to buy boxes, like if you're running out of a certain size or something like that, you can buy them from Amazon. That's typically where I buy my boxes from. I have bought from Staples website when they were running a sale. I don't think I've bought from Uline, but a lot of people have bought from Uline. Uline is a big shipping supply store, but I do get my shipping supplies. I have an eBay store. And when you have an eBay store, like you pay for a store subscription, you get a certain amount of shipping supply credit every quarter to use. So I don't ship a huge amount of stuff, but the stuff that I do use, I always use my credit every 4 times a year. So mine is $25 I get in shipping supplies. So I'll buy through the eBay store, and I get smaller boxes and shoe boxes and stuff like that from there. Inventory is obviously a must, but that's going to be its own category section here in a little bit later in the video. Tools. I'm trying to think if there's other main tools. There's not a lot of tools you need. To like drop your packages off, you just go to the post office. If they already have the label on them, you can just drop them in the dump bin. If your store has one, you could even schedule pickups. And if you want to, if you trust the system, the thing with eBay is, and the other platforms, is if your item is not scanned in within your shipping time, then you get like your account will get dinged or whatever. So if you're a postal service person who comes to your house, if they are good and they will scan the items in like they're supposed to when they pick them up, then that's no issue. But if you're leery on whether or not they will, or you know that they won't, then just drop them off to the post office. I have my shipping time set for 3 days handling time, and I only go twice a week. So it's not overwhelming at all. But if I sold more items, like I used to go every day, but then I realized that there was no point. I was just wasting time and gas, really. Let's see. Another question that people will want to know a lot is how to know what's good items and what's not good items, and how to determine how the item will sell. And once you do it long enough, you'll eventually know kind of what does well and what doesn't, because past experiences, you had an item and it sold right away, or you had an item and it sat for 3 years and didn't go anywhere. But if you don't know and you're sitting in front of an item at the thrift store or something like that, you can look it up. I do recommend, when we're talking platforms, to start with eBay, because eBay has the most amount of customers on it and the most amount of shoppers on it. So if you want to sell your item and get started, I would make eBay be your main one before you start branching out into the other platforms, just because it'll get you sales quicker, I think. So you can take an item, say, I have a hammer here. I was putting some stuff up. Say you want to know how much this hammer is. Let me see if I can figure out how to screen share, and I will show you how to look up hammers. Let's see. Shift 7. It says Shift 7. That didn't work. Okay, it's asking for permissions. One moment. Click the lock. Okay, I think we're in. Okay, it might not work this time. It says I have to restart. Okay, there we are. Can you guys see me? It's leaving like a weird thingy-majig here, but okay, so we are on eBay. Okay, I'm gonna go up here, and we're gonna search. We're gonna go to the search, and we're gonna go pink hammer. Pink hammer. Okay, so there's a bunch of pink hammers here, and you are just going to scroll down. This will tell you, like, if you look up here, there's 6,600 results of items that are listed. If you scroll down, and you can go to sold items on the far left here, and these are not hammers that are pulling up. They're kind of hammers, but maybe I should find something that's a bit better of a example here. All right, I have a GoPro here. Let's search GoPro Hero 7. Okay, so we're still in sold listings. Let me take the sold feature off here. And now we are looking at total listed items. So if you see on the top, there are 387 listed GoPros. And if you scroll down, I'm going to write that number down so that I don't forget, because we're going to do some math here. 387 listed. And we're going to click sold. There are more than 1,200 sold listings for this GoPro. So you see here, some of them have accessories, some of them are just the camera itself. You can see if it's pre-owned. These ones are pre-owned. You can mark your search features on the side, your filter. You can condition up here. You can mark them as you only want to see new ones. And so the green will show you that it's a sold listing. And when you are looking for an item, so say I'm at a yard sale and I see a GoPro and it's, I don't know, they want to ask $20 for it. And you're wondering, do I pick this up and sell it? Do I pass on it because it's not that great of a deal? What do you do? So you pull up the solds, you see that there's some listed and there's a lot sold. There's way more sold than there are listed, and that is a good thing. So you want to try and focus on your sell-through rate and see if the item's going to be good. So the ratio I typically look for is if there's 100 listed and there's 100 sold, then it's got a 100% sell-through rate. Like, it's going to sell. And the stats on eBay are 90 days. So when you see the solds and you see the listed items, those are items that are listed in the past 90 days and sold in the past, well, no, not listed in the past 90 days, but the sold comps are 90 days. I'm sorry. Listed is going to be all items that are listed. So it's definitely a good buy. Like, this is a buy I would pick up because the amount that is sold is way higher than the amount that's listed. But say, for example, you looked up like this hair tie and there was 10,000 listed and there was only 500 sold. It's going to take you forever to sell this hair tie. So I would run away from that. So you want to look at your sold ratio versus your listed ratio to see, always shoot for items that have more solds or the same amount of solds, or even if there's 100 listed and 50 sold, it's a 50% sell-through rate. And I would even think that a 50% sell-through rate would be good to pick up as well. But anything below that, I wouldn't pick up unless you have a lot of space that you could just sit on that item for a long time. But you also want to make sure that the average price that the item is selling for is high enough for you to make a considerable profit that you're going to feel comfortable with. So if you saw a $20 brand new GoPro and you see that they're selling here for like $160, this one's, well, this is not a 7, this is 11, but $449, $185, I would definitely pick that up because you're going to make big profit on that. So let me go ahead and stop sharing here. And we'll go back. So yeah, that's my recommendation on knowing if it's a good item to sell or not. You look at your how many sold versus how many listed, and make sure that the selling price is going to be enough for you to make enough profit based on the cost that you paid for the item, which is your cost of goods sold. And if you're looking at the sold comps on eBay and you see a price that has like a line through it, a strike through, that means that they accepted an offer, and it's not going to tell you what the offer was. The price that you see with the strike through is the price that it was originally listed at. And the only way that I'm aware of to actually see what those items sold for, like what the offer price that was accepted was, is there is a search feature called Terapeak. And that's like way more detailed eBay, but there's a search feature called Terapeak and it will tell you what the actual sold price is. But that's more advanced eBay knowledge right now. The different marketplaces, I kind of talked about that for a minute, but the main one that you would want to start out with is eBay. eBay is my primary one. I am on several other marketplaces. I do sell on Mercari, Poshmark, Facebook Marketplace, and Whatnot. But Whatnot is a little different from the other ones that I listed because it is primarily an auction selling app. So you could do auctions on eBay and you can do buy it now, but Whatnot specializes in auctions, and they're live auctions. They're not just online auctions like eBay's format is. And the cons to Whatnot is the sell prices are way, 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 way low unless you have a large following. Whatnot is a very social selling platform. So, like, if you have a big social following, then they can follow you to Whatnot. Then your sales get higher because people bid them up. But if you don't have that following, Whatnot is good to source, which sourcing is what it is called when you go out and you look for inventory. Another term that you might hear a lot in reselling is a death pile. And I'll show you. Death pile is what's under that blanket. Death pile is items that you have bought to resell, but you haven't listed them yet, and they're just sitting there because you either don't have the motivation or for whatever reason, you just have too much inventory. So that's what death pile means, if you guys are curious. How to take pictures of the items. You don't need a fancy camera, which camera is a tool that you need, but it doesn't have to be fancy. I just use my phone. Many, many people use their phone. I have a Galaxy S21. The camera in it is sufficient, and you don't need some elaborate backdrop setup at all. Like, for the longest time, I was taking pictures on my kitchen floor because the floor is like a fancy fake wood background, and it was pretty, and it was consistent. It doesn't need to be white. I mean, eBay says technically they prefer you to have an all white background, but they don't enforce it. It's not a must. And as long as your pictures look visually appealing and there is good lighting, then you are good to go. It really won't affect your sales. So I don't know if you guys can see. I now have a little bench here with a little furry rug on it, and it doesn't matter if you have the furry rug or not. And then I just put this wallpaper up here, but it was just a gray wall before that. I have a little ring light that I would set here, and I just set the items on this bench, and I take the picture now. But again, before that, I was just using my kitchen floor. So it does not have to be elaborate at all. And you don't need a ring light. Like when I was taking the pictures in the kitchen, I use my kitchen lighting. I do prefer natural lighting, but if it's a rainy day or you don't have natural lighting, like, just make do. Do you guys have any questions for me so far? I'm not seeing any questions coming through. Hi, thank you. Thank you. Let me see if you okay. Thank you, A New Life Resale. What's your favorite, if you're a reseller ready, what's your favorite thing to resell? I'm curious. So let's talk a little bit about should you niche and where to get inventory. So when I first started out, I sold anything and everything. And for the most part, I still do. But should you niche? It gets a little bit easier if you do have a niche, because then you can be laser focused on that one thing and you really don't need to comp so much when you are out sourcing. You could just say, hey, you know what? I know this. I know that that's good. And I know that that's going to sell, or, that one's not so good. So, it's easier to source that way when you have a niche. You can make better systems when you have a niche, because if you only sell clothes, then you can just have a backdrop that's fit for clothes. You don't need, something that's bigger, more elaborate, or, for delicates or anything like that. It's also easier to ship. Like, if you're an antique seller, you're going to need, a lot more packing supplies. Your items might be a little bit different sizes, so you always got to have different boxes. Like, I try to sell smaller things because I hate packing, things where I've got to do so much packing tape and bubble wrap and will this fit, will this break? I don't like any of that. I don't like shipping breakables, but you can decide on what your niche is. It's always easier to source when you enjoy what you are sourcing. So, like, if you are a kid at heart and you love video games and vintage toys, then stick with that, because you know them. You know what's good, you know what's not, and then you're just going to enjoy it. And because you enjoy it, it's going to be easier to work. Because if you don't enjoy the things that you're listing and they're boring you, it's going to be so much harder to do the work, and then you're going to end up with a large death pile. And you guys are here to make money, I assume. So We don't want you to have death files, though I do have one. I think every reseller has one. I am an everything seller, but I love the history of vintage hard goods, simplicity of selling clothes. I don't like selling clothes only because I know like you got to take measurements, and some people press their clothes, and I don't press my clothes. If they're dirty, I'll wash them, but I do like the simplicity of shipping clothes. But for the most part, I'm kind of an everything seller, but I have gravitated more towards shoes. So I love shoes to sell them. I think Crocs now are my favorite. I love Crocs. I don't know. They're easy to ship. They're easy to clean. They sell well. They sell quickly. So, an inventory on where to get inventory. Reselling, if you're, reselling items that are pre-used, thrift stores, resale shops, garage sales, yard sales, estate sales, those kinds of things. What kind of inspiration do you need to sell shoes? It's hard when you're having to clean them, but I kind of batch them. Like I'll just throw them all in a tote until they need cleaned, and then I'll do like one big group cleaning of all of them and then list them. So I don't know. I think it's easy to take pictures of them too. So I don't know if you watch Harry Tornado, but he's kind of the one who inspired me to sell more shoes. So maybe if you're not familiar with him, go look him up on YouTube, Harry Tornado, and he sells and cleans a lot of shoes. So yeah, cleaning them is, if they're really gross, I won't buy them, but I'll always pick up Crocs as long as they're not, like, I don't care how much dirt is on a Croc, but like if it's torn or has holes or like there's no more like tread on the bottom, I won't pick up those kind of Crocs. But I love Crocs. Crocs are my go-to. Inventory. We were talking about inventory. And then there's always the inventory that you can get, like if you're not selling new things, like if you go into liquidation, that is an option too, where, if you're unfamiliar with what liquidation is, it's basically when stores have overstock and they sell it to liquidators, and there's Amazon. You can even do like returns. Liquidators get returned items. Sometimes there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. The person just didn't like it, and it goes into liquidation returns. So there are stores that are popping up all over the United States called bin stores. You can go there and source, but I would like to seriously caution you on selling those kinds of items. I used to get, if you watched any of my past YouTube videos, I did unboxings of liquidated items that I got, and I used to specialize. My niche was HBA, which is health and beauty. I've kind of strayed away from that. But I did get sued for selling a liquidated item that I thought was 100% legit, and it wasn't. And it was a terrible situation. So you never know what you're going to get from liquidated merchandise. So if you guys want to know how that ended, go back in my YouTube videos. You will see all about it. But that wasn't fun. So you do have to be careful when you are selling liquidated, well, anything, but liquidated items as well. There is, if we're on the topic of things to avoid, you can't just sell any item online either. There is something, and eBay calls it Vero, which is like verified rights ownership. I don't know what the E means. Maybe VE is just verified. I don't know. But there are companies that don't want you selling their products because it's copyrighted or what have you. And a lot of times some of them don't care. Like they just don't care. But some companies will come for you. Sometimes it's just them sending you a cease and desist email saying, hey, stop selling this. Other times they don't send anything and they just take you to court, like what happened to me. So don't do that. But there is a list on eBay that you can look up. It's called the Vero list, and it'll give you a list of all the companies that participate in the Vero list, but it's not honestly very helpful because, again, there are a lot of companies that are cutthroat that aren't on the list. And then there's a lot of companies that are on the list that won't do anything at all. So it's there are definitely challenges to reselling, but does anybody else have any questions? I'm trying to think of some other things you guys might want to know without doing a huge deep dive. Um, if you're wondering how to do auctions, I know since COVID happened, most auction houses have kind of turned, at least in our area, have turned to online auctions. So I would just go to the computer and Google like auctions near me or something like that. And a lot of times you should be able to find some websites that do local auctions that you can bid on just from your computer, and you don't even have to go anywhere until it's time to pick the item up. So I do recommend that. We do source that way sometimes. Um, does anybody else have any other questions about reselling? I know that was a very simplistic deep dive, but if you guys have more specific questions, I am happy to answer them. If you guys want to know, I have here, let me pull up exactly how many are on my eBay. 1 second. 354 active on my eBay right now. I do this super part-time. I'm a full-time mommy, but I do this super part-time. So that's how many I have on eBay. I sell also on Poshmark, Mercari, Facebook Marketplace, and whatnot, kind of. So I'm on those platforms, but primarily eBay. I used to cross post most of my items to the other platforms, but then the sales just kind of slowed down, and I ended up getting rid of my cross posting software just because I was not really using it. It was a great platform. I used List Perfectly when I was using my cross posting platforms, but the sales in the other platforms just kind of slowed down, so I stopped cross posting. So I might get back into it. I don't know, but right now I just mainly post to eBay. Um, so my inventory here, again, I primarily like smalls just because I find that they're easier to ship, and I don't have a lot of storage space for boxes. So if I can fit it in a small bubble mailer, that's great. And I should be more organized than I am. I don't know if you guys can see, but these boxes are all numbered, well, lettered and numbered. And for the most part, in my brain, I can kind of remember where something is because the boxes aren't deep. But if not, I just look until I find it. But at some point, I do want to get like super professional about it and get into my eBay and put the SKUs. And so I know whenever an item sells exactly what box it is, but I've got time for that. My systems work pretty fine for now. So do we have any other questions? I do want to talk about payments real quick. If you're wondering how quick can I make money on eBay, or how quick can I get started with this, you can even sell items from around your house. You don't have to go out and source items first. When I first got into reselling, I wanted to see how quickly I could do it. And I was afraid of eBay at first because I heard a lot of bad things about eBay. So my first item was a beauty item. I think it was like a body scrub or something that I got from like a subscription box, and I didn't want it. I wasn't going to use it. So I posted it to Mercari, and it sold pretty quickly. And then I was hooked. But with another reason why I prefer eBay over the other platforms is because eBay, once you're an established seller, they will release your funds pretty quickly. Like you can get paid for the item before it gets delivered, whereas all the other platforms, every single one that I've sold on, you have to wait until the item is delivered. So Poshmark, Facebook, and Mercari are all 3 days after the item is delivered that you get paid, unless the buyer rates you first. You don't have to be rated on Facebook, but the other two, you have to be rated. Like if they accept the item and then they rate you, then your funds get released. But if they don't rate you, then your funds will get auto released after 3 days after it's delivered. So you do have to wait longer to get paid once an item sells on the other platforms. Whereas eBay, I have my deposit set to daily deposit, and it takes 24 hours for the funds to process and hit, like, be available in eBay, and then it sends it to my bank account, and then just your bank, depending on your bank, is how quickly it'll get released to you. But I can get my funds in my bank account so much quicker just selling on eBay than I can on the others. But depending on what you're selling, it's gonna, like, you can get sales right away. My friend just started reselling, and she only listed 4 items, and they were plush. That's another thing I like to sell, is plush. But she only listed 4 items, and she sold 2 of them in within a week. So, and when you are just like a new account, a new seller account on eBay, your funds will get held the first couple of times until the item is delivered, because they do want to make sure that you're not a scammer and that you're actually shipping out the items that you say you're shipping out. And I don't know how long they do that for, but it's not very long. And then they start to release your funds right away once they can kind of get the gist that you're not a scammer and you're a real person trying to make some money. So that is my spiel about eBay payments. Um, you're very welcome. Yep. How long have you been reselling? A new life resale? How many items do you list a day part time? So I don't list every day. I should. I don't. I have a little 3-year-old and other side hustles that I am working on. And I would love, ideally, for it to be 10 a day. I've heard that 10 is a really good um, standard to list every day, because then it keeps the algorithm moving. eBay is very much what you put in, you get out, but eBay likes to see that you're doing stuff every single day, and it'll kind of boost your algorithm to more people. And I've always heard that, 10 is a good one, but even if you can't do 10, or maybe you don't have 10 items every single day to list, even 3 will be enough to kind of stimulate the algorithm. Um, but also, if you aren't able to list, like, for a couple days in a row, if you send out offers, that still shows the eBay algorithm that you are having activity in your store, and it still helps kind of tickle the algorithm. Yes, I've been doing it 3 years. I started in August, the year of COVID, and I had a newborn then. Some weeks, some months, I'm more active in my reselling, and then there are others where I'm just like, meh. I mean, obviously, if you need it, you absolutely need the money, and then it's a little bit easier to be motivated. But um, I have, like I said, I have a little toddler, and my husband works a lot, and it's just kind of hard for me. To find motivation a lot, to list every day. Um, oh, something else I wanted to mention is, when we're talking about sourcing and where to get your items, something that a store that I didn't even know existed until I started reselling is the Goodwill outlet, and or the Goodwill bins. So let me know if you guys know of, if you have one by you. But it's Goodwill, and it's like a Goodwill clearance center, but everything is in these big bins, and it's crazy, and everything's just, like, dumped in these bins, and, like, there's zero organization, and you can find some pretty good things, but you could also find some pretty nasty things in there, so be warned. But everything is sold there by the pound. So the store by me, I think, is $1.39 or $1.49 a pound. And you just dig and dig and dig, and whatever you want, you put in your cart, and then they weigh your cart, and then that's how much you pay. So the one near me is about half an hour away, but it's not in a really great part of town. So I won't take my kids there. So I don't get to go there very often, but it is a fun place to find cheap, cheap inventory, especially if you're like a thrill of the hunt kind of person. Any other questions? We totally should. We should. My daughter starts preschool real soon, so I do want to at least work on my reselling a minimum of 1 day a week. Good job. Yes, get them listed. Hi, Becky. Nice to meet you too. Are you in my free Facebook group by chance? It's linked in the description to this, but um, I'm teaching all things side hustles in there, and obviously reselling is one of them because it's what I know the most of. But if not, you should totally join, and you can get some motivation in there as well. Do we have any other questions? I do plan on going live, I think, next week, and I do like a wash and fold laundry service as well for a side hustle, and people wanted to know like a live Q&A about that too. So I do plan on doing that. I'll probably do that one next week. If anybody has any questions about the laundry business that I do for extra income, we can talk about that next week. So unless there's any other questions, I will go ahead and hop off for now. As long as I could figure out how to make sure it stays on replay, there will be a replay of this if you're watching afterwards. I don't see any other questions coming in. All right, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you probably next week. Bye.